Landscape photography is a powerful way to connect with nature, a reminder of how small we are in the vast world around us. When it comes to landscape photography in Australia, there's arguably no better place than the iconic Great Ocean Road and Otways. A Photographer's Guide to the Great Ocean Road and Otways by Samantha Olsen is a book that provides everything you need to know about 152 different shoot locations, from the best times of day to visit, the ideal seasons, tide heights, drone regulations, even whether you can bring your dog. It's your ultimate guide to photographing the Great Ocean Road and Otways safely and creatively. 4 years of research went into this book, uncovering hidden locations and determining the best and safest times to visit each one. Those of you with limited time, this book will help you make the most of every moment you have. Whether you shoot with a DSLR or mirrorless camera, or if you're planning to visit the Great Ocean Road or Otways, this book can be your essential companion. Here's what you'll find inside: 152 shoot locations, a location breakdown separated into accommodation areas for easy planning, skills for great landscape images focused on seascapes and waterfalls, weather and tidal information. With 750 pages of information and over 1,000 full-colour images and diagrams, this book is a treasure trove of knowledge. This how-to photography guide, combined with a travel guide, all in one beautifully crafted book, gives you everything you need so you don't waste a moment of your trip. So, don't miss out. Visit Kickstarter.com and search for Great Ocean Road book to get your copy today. Choose a package that includes a physical hardcover book to enjoy all the beautiful images, plus an ebook so you can take this guide with you wherever you go. Get ready to discover the Great Ocean Road like never before. Hello and welcome to Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, likes and dislikes. Laura Oppelt, a 26-year-old landscape photographer from Germany, shares her journey from picking up a budget camera to capturing the raw beauty of nature. Growing up in Bavaria, her love for the outdoors led her to explore and document the wild landscapes of the north, particularly Norway, where she lived for 16 months. She discusses how studying geography enhances her understanding of landscapes, balancing photography with academics and the patience required to master the craft. Laura reflects on shooting in remote locations, teaching workshops, and the creative process behind her work, offering insights into her artistic evolution and love for nature. I hope you enjoy the show. Hey, Laura, welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
Thank you very much for the invitation. Yeah, excited to be here. Doing great. Thank you. How about you?
Yeah, I'm just fine and absolutely pleased that you've come on the show. It's wonderful to get to talk to you for a little while and hopefully get to know you a little bit better. So,
yeah, thanks for having me.
Why don't we tell people who you are? Who is Laura Oppelt?
Yeah, I'm a landscape photographer from Germany, 26 years old. I live in Western Germany, in Bonn, where I currently study. I come from Southern Germany, from near Munich. And I think that area also plays a big role in my photography. I love the mountains, I love mountain lakes, and there's lots to find in Southern Germany. So I think that is also a big source of inspiration for me. Yeah, I don't do photography full time at the moment. I do it part time since I still study. So I try to combine both in my life at the moment. Yeah, but photography has been a big part of it for quite some years now.
Understandable. So are you studying arts or are you studying photography in any way, or something just completely and utterly unrelated?
Yeah, something, it's unrelated, but it also relates a little bit to it. I study geography. So it's cool to learn about landscapes, about processes that happen in nature, and then photograph landscapes. So it is something that connects both geography and photography.
Awesome. Yeah. Geography used to be one of my favorite subjects in high school, and I still love a map.
Come to the club.
All right. So what does photography mean to you? What part does it play in your life?
Wow, it's become a big part of my life, definitely. And I think for me, it means peace of mind for me. So I can really calm down with photography. It helps me focus just on the moment and being in the moment, which is super cool because you can disconnect so easily from distracting things and you can connect to nature, to the outdoors, which I really like. I've always liked being outdoors, hiking, camping. And so photography is something that also connects me to nature, which is super cool.
Awesome. I noticed on your website in your about section, there's actually a really nice quote that you've got there about you taking photographs because then you can have that moment twice. So once in your memory and once in the camera.
Exactly,
A little bit
exactly
about
that.
why that is.
Yeah, I think I've always been a person that is super visual. So I need pictures to memorize, and it just helps me. And it's nice to have that moment also in a picture and to remember it that way. And I can also, of course, play with that creativity and with that imagination. Yeah, so it's just a cool way to really keep these moments visible.
Is your greatest influence? Is it a person, a place, a moment in time that just sparked your interest and said, okay, I want to make art out of this wonderful world that we live in?
Wow, that's a good question, definitely. I think it's a mix of everything. So there's definitely some places that inspired me. There was also one moment where I was standing on a beach and I tried to take a photograph, but the photograph didn't really turn out as I saw the moment and as I saw it. So the colors were not representative. The dynamic range wasn't really fitting. And that was a moment when I was a little bit frustrated because I couldn't capture the actual atmosphere of the image. And
Sure.
I think that was something that really made me dive into photography even deeper because I wanted to learn how to have that moment in a picture that is representative. And I think that was a big inspiration in a way. But of course, there's also been some people that really inspired me. For
Sure.
example, one German photographer, Dennis Pulkleser, he was one of the first photographers I was following along, and he took amazing pictures of Iceland. So he traveled a lot to Iceland and Norway, yeah, lots of Nordic countries, and his images are just mind blowing. So I really liked his dark processing, this atmosphere, and I think that is something that definitely inspires me.
What is it about the mountains and the Arctic and snow and ice that sort of fascinates you?
I think it's the roughness of the landscapes. They are so pristine, so wild, and I think this is something that is not that often to find in Germany. So, of
Yeah,
course, in
okay.
the mountains you have it,
Yeah.
but if you really want some rough, wild, pristine landscapes without any human impact, then you need to go further north or also to different places, which also sparked my travel fascination. But yeah, I really love these still pristine places without human influence. Super interesting, also photography wise.
Yeah, awesome. And do you plan a lot, or are you more reactive and you just decide to go somewhere and then react to the landscape? Or do you sit there and pore over Google Maps and or Google Earth and try and find those little spots that everyone hasn't been to?
Oh yeah, that happens very often during the night. So often I hang around on Google Earth, Google Maps, and I just scroll to places and zoom in, zoom out, and then I find something interesting, and then it keeps me going for hours. So sometimes it's a little bit addictive to research for new places, but it's a lot of fun. So I think it's both for me. It's both preparation beforehand, so that I try to pick interesting places which I see on hiking maps or on Google Maps, but it's also some flexibility involved, especially in the field, because sometimes you cannot plan everything. Of course, you can plan quite a lot. You can plan where the Milky Way will rise, where you will, yeah, photograph a sunset or sunrise. But sometimes it's also good to have some flexibility in the plan and to change plans as well. So it's both.
Have you ever had a really deep emotional or spiritual connection while shooting a particular landscape? Can you share that experience with us?
That often happens when I also camp in nature. So when I'm out with a tent and my backpack, that's for me the easiest way to really connect to nature because you are part of it. I've had that, yeah, sometimes, especially when I was hiking in Norway, which is a country that is super inspiring to me. I was camping on a ridge line between two mountains, and there were two valleys below, one to the right and one to the left. And the one to the right was completely filled with fog in the morning. It was the first night I stayed there was quite frustrating because I couldn't see anything. Everything was dark and cloudy. It was raining a little bit. And so I decided to stay one more night. So that's also part of the flexibility I was talking about. I just decided to stay one more night because I wasn't happy with the conditions I found there. And then the next morning, it was just magical. So I opened my tent, and valley to the right was filled with fog. I was super excited, went out. And then when the sun came up, you had this alpenglow on the mountains. And then the other side of the valley also has a little mountain lake. And the sun was rising directly behind that mountain lake. And I was just running around like crazy, trying to capture everything. And the good thing in Norway is that sunrises, they last for about 2 hours. So you have light, like endless great light to shoot. And I was really running around like crazy and trying to capture all the scenes, all the different compositions I was trying to scout the day before. And that was something that was, I was so energetic, and the landscape was so responding to that. So it was, just a very cool moment to really connect to that scene and to see what all the light can do with the landscape. That was cool.
Oh, that paints a beautiful picture.
Definitely. Oh, it was great.
And I guess when your portfolio has obviously a strong theme around those wintry sort of landscapes, and I'm not saying it's all that, but there's a strong veering towards that. Is there a particular sort of project in mind that you've got around collecting those sorts of landscapes over and above anything else, or is it just this is your preference and that's where you want to go?
Yeah, funny that you recognize it. There's no project going on. In fact, I hate freezing. So that's funny because I often shoot in Arctic landscapes in the cold.
Yeah.
I hate freezing. So I really need to force myself out sometimes because of the cold. But I just love these peaceful winter magic. You have endless snowy hills. You have so much silence, and everything is so peaceful. And I think this is something that really inspires me in winter landscapes, and this is why I love shooting them.
Yeah. And in terms of expression and infusing your own sort of style and vision into those landscapes, how successful do you think you've been so far? How do you feel your style has developed so far, and where do you see your style developing in future?
It definitely took some time to develop where I am right now, I think. So in the beginning, it was all about learning and focusing on what I like, and try to find the style I want to express. I think that took me maybe 4 or 5 years to really get there. At the moment, I'm quite happy with it, but of course, you always have some phases of frustration or some phases where you want to change something, and then it's time to think about everything, to reflect on own images, on own style. I have that every now and then, but I think at the moment I have a quite consistent style, which I'm happy with. I really like dark and moody scenes, so I always process my images with a little darkness in it. Yeah, some vignetting, some Orton effect. Yeah, so that you have like this dreamy, dark, moody style. Yeah, but definitely it might change again in the future, and it's also depending a little bit on the landscape. For example, that the dark style works great for Norway, for the Faroe Islands, for Germany, for the mountains. But I found, for example, that for Namibia, it didn't work. So I had to change my style for that kind of landscape.
The light there is just completely different. It's just not.
You name it.
It's not a dark place.
Exactly. So you have to also adapt to the landscape and find a slightly different style for these kinds of countries or landscapes. This is something I really like about photography. It's never ending. So you always have something to learn and something, you can change and something you can try out. So it's very vivid.
Yeah. I'm interested in the process of experimentation and risk taking. And have you done much experimentation with your photography and started to take risks in the way that you're either framing up an image or changing the techniques that you're using? And just wondered if you could talk about that and how you deal with when things don't quite work the way that you want, because with experimentation comes the obvious I won't say failure, but the learning experience of saying, okay, that experiment didn't work. I need to change something again. So talk to me a little
Definitely.
bit about how that's worked in your photography.
Yeah, so I think in the beginning I was experimenting a lot with filters in photography. So I did quite some long exposures, stuff like that, which was super interesting, especially in the beginning when I learned, yeah, about exposure time, about all that technical stuff. That definitely helped me, but I got away from that again because I noticed that I like dynamics in my image, and with filters you often smoothen out every dynamic you have. So I don't use filters that often anymore.
Okay.
um, yeah, I really like the dynamics. That was definitely one experimental part. And also to understand like the difference between shooting from eye level and going very low towards the foregrounds. That was definitely something I learned, and I was experimenting a lot with it to how close do I have to get to make the foreground very big or to make it interesting. How far away is maybe even better. So yeah, that sort of experimentation. But I don't think that I had any crazy part of frustration with that. It was just about learning and trying out, which is super, super interesting for me. Of course,
Cool.
then I also played around a little bit with drones, which was very cool to see because you get different angles and yeah, just a different perspective on things that you cannot see from the ground, which was also, yeah, really cool.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I was against drones per se, but I just had resisted buying one for a very long time, and I bought one last year. And that change in perspective makes a big difference, particularly for things like seascapes, because you can actually get the drone out to sea and look at rock formations and whatever from angles that you could only see previously from a boat or a helicopter or something like that.
You name
Uh,
it. Yeah,
uh,
it's very interesting, definitely.
do you define as success in your photography?
A successful photography or a success I achieved with photography?
Either.
Oh, so a
The
successful
question's more
photography,
about how you answer it rather than.
cool. A successful photograph for me is a photograph that really represents the scene as I've seen it in the field. So
Hmm.
something I can still connect with it, even if I'm sitting at home on my computer, for example. So yeah, a photograph that sparks my emotion and that brings me back to the moment when I took the image. That's
Sure.
definitely a successful photograph. A success in my photography. I think one of my biggest successes was definitely to change my hobby into my passion and also something with I can earn money with. That was
Yep.
definitely a big success for me. So I started out with workshops in 2023,
Okay.
and that was just super cool to see that I could make it work. And yeah, that's definitely big success.
Yeah. How do you think that's changed your perspective on your photography?
I think it's definitely a different thing when you teach photography as when you have all the time for yourself taking pictures.
You
It's
take a lot less
super
photos,
helpful.
right?
Exactly. And it's also super helpful to get to know new perspectives because sometimes you're so focused on your own type of photography, on your own style. And yeah, taking pictures with other people and helping them with their photography also opens up my own mind and I learn from them as well. So, of
Yeah,
course, I try to teach all my knowledge and all the things that I know, but it works both sides. People can also inspire yourself, of course.
absolutely.
So that's definitely been a cool way to even dive into other styles of photography as well.
Yeah. I love the fact that when you're running a workshop, you can have three or four, or five people, whatever, and they can be standing within 10 meters of one another, working a scene, and they'll all come up with something completely different. And you look at it and you go, wow, I wish I could have seen that because I didn't see that particular framing or whatever. They used a zoom lens, for example, to get in close to an object or something.
Yeah,
And
100%. Yeah,
it,
it's super interesting how people perceive things differently, and
it
also helping them to see other things that they haven't seen in the field, for example. Yeah, it's a cool journey, definitely.
You mentioned that you've self-taught largely. Talk to me a bit about that journey and how you actually went about that. And were you structured in that, or was it, oh, I need to know how to do this, so I'm going to go and find a YouTube video that tells me how to do this?
Yeah, so as I said, I think I always loved being outdoors, and that was definitely the first step into photography, so that I just, liked hiking, liked being outdoors. And at some point, I got a little camera from the discounter. It was just like I don't know, maybe 3 megapixels, nothing special. But I just took it with me on my little trips. At that time, of course, I didn't have a driver's license. I was, I don't know, 14 years old, something like that. So I just took the bike to places nearby, and I took the camera with me. And it was just like playing around with it. It was just snapshotting, but I really noticed that I liked it. And so I tried to get better with that. And then I saved all my money for my first DSLR camera. And then I had that moment which I was talking about before on the beach, where when I wanted to take that photograph and it didn't work out because the dynamics was just different. And that really got me more into photography. I really wanted to then improve and to learn. And then a phase started in which I was reading a lot, in which I was experimenting a lot with settings. And I also started a little bit with post-processing. And that definitely changed a lot. Yeah, I think time between first picking up a camera and that kind of change was about maybe 1.5, 2 years, something like that. And after that period, photography just totally got me. So then I was really hyped and I spent more and more time with it. I also then took trips farther away. I planned more. Yeah, so it was a continuous journey, nothing that happens overnight, of course, but something that just really sparked me and got my inspiration. And
you talked very much something that I relate to, talked about the obsession that photography becomes. How do you fit it in with study and the rest of life? It can be all-consuming and it can take over your life. How do you avoid that, and how do you balance things?
So in the beginning, I didn't have a choice to do it like 100% of my time because I was still going to school. So then photography was something I did on the weekends or sometimes even before I went to school. So I know in summer that there was some mornings before I took the bus to school, I went out for a sunrise or something. Yep. So I always fitted it around my schedule with school and also with university. But in the beginning, it was more like a weekend thing. I sacrificed some other hobbies for that. So in the beginning, my weekends they were like football all the time. And then sometimes I reduced the amount of playing. Okay. Yeah. And then, at some point I reduced the amount of playing and spent more time with photography. And I still fit it around my university schedule, but right now it works quite well because I'm quite flexible with my courses. So for example, next semester I have 1 semester off. I'm not at university, but I do more trips then. So it definitely works. But of course, it's different when you're not a full-time photographer. So of course, sometimes you cannot go out because you have an exam the next morning or something. So so far it has worked quite well.
Is there a plan for it to become full-time, or is it still going to remain a hobby and while you earn money elsewhere?
It will definitely be more than a hobby. So I think half-time photography is very realistic. I'm not sure if I want it full-time or if I will do it full-time at some point. I could definitely imagine it, but at the moment, I don't know yet. I haven't decided yet. And the good thing is that I don't have to decide it right now. So that's exactly, that's the cool thing. So the plan is to finish my studies while I do photography as well. And then I can still decide if I want to, pursue a career in geography or in photography, or if I try to combine both, because there are definitely possibilities to do both, I think.
Absolutely. And you can always your photography and your geography career, as you said earlier.
Exactly. Yeah, that might be even the best solution maybe. But at this point, I'm quite relaxed and I just, wait and see where photography or geography takes me. And then, we'll see.
Talk to me about how and why you got started in doing workshops. Was it as a means of making money out of your photography, or was it just a natural extension of wanting to help and educate people?
It was actually not really my own decision in the first place because a company reached out to me. So Photo reached out to me and I was super surprised. I didn't, I wasn't expecting that. But I was very happy about the message. They shot me a message via Instagram. And first, I didn't see the message because I was out in the field. I don't know where I were, but I was definitely not at home. So I missed the message. And then they even wrote me an email again. And then I was like, okay, cool. They really were interested, reaching out to me via both Instagram and mail. And yeah, they proposed me to be part of a boot camp as a teacher, as a master. And I was super excited about that, super happy, of course, a little nervous as well, definitely. But I just thought that I give it a try and see how it goes and where it might take me. And it was super fun. It was, yeah, boot camp in Menorca. And that was the first time I was teaching, but I really noticed that it's super fun. It's super cool to hang out with people that have the same interests and that want to learn and want to get better. And from that point on, I was hooked. And then we started working together.
Awesome.
So that was the beginning of the workshop journey.
Fantastic. And what have you learnt from running your business? How has that sort of changed your thinking about your photography, but also about how you might earn money out of photography?
It's definitely more paperwork than expected. But of course I live in Germany, so we have lots of paperwork to do. But for me it's definitely worth it. I'm still at the beginning, so I don't do it for a long time. It's just my third full year doing that. So I'm still at the beginning, but it's definitely a great way to make a living with my passion. Don't know what to say more, but it's definitely worth it. And of course, there's always things you can still improve, you can learn. But so far, I'm very happy with having that possibility and that opportunity, because it's a big privilege to earn money with something you really love and something that makes you happy. So I really appreciate that.
I'm interested in the way that place can change the way that people actually shoot. I don't mean what they shoot, but how they shoot. So there's this nexus, I feel, between where people not necessarily live, but where they choose to shoot and how they choose to shoot, as opposed that can be shaped by where they choose and what they choose to shoot. And I'm just interested if that's something that you've actually come across yourself.
So in the beginning, I was just shooting around my neighborhood, and I think sometimes it's definitely more challenging to shoot in an environment that you know very well, because then you maybe don't even see exactly, you don't think about it in a photography perspective, and sometimes you then maybe don't see things that you would see in other places because you go there with a purpose. For example, if I decide to travel to, I don't know, Madeira or something like that, then of course I have a plan in mind. I have some ideas and I want to get these ideas.
Spots that you've got to get to.
Exactly. Absolutely. So I think, sometimes it's definitely more challenging to shoot in a known environment, but it can really help to improve your eye and to really see things in your normal life. It's definitely a challenging thing, but I think it really helps. But of course, traveling and the love for travels is something that makes you want to go to places and explore more, because if you always shoot in the same environment, then it can get a little boring. You can still find cool things, but just to widen your horizon, it's great to see other places as well and get also inspiration from other places.
Yeah. And do you have a favorite place that you keep going back to?
It's definitely Norway. It's always been Norway for me. After school, I lived in an area close to Trondheim for about 1.5 years.
Okay.
I was an au pair there. I took care of the children and the household, and also did some photography, obviously. And I was also studying in Bergen for 1 semester. Kind of Norway has always been the place that has inspired me. So I always love traveling back. I know the language, so that also helps, of course. But in Norway, there's lots of places that I really like, and I keep visiting when I'm there. So I always try to also go back to these places and see how they look now and what has changed. And
And what's the most memorable experience you've had? Is there a particular story of a shoot where things just all came together and it was amazing?
Absolutely. So the story I told before was definitely one of those moments when I had this crazy morning. That was one experience. And another one was also in Norway. I was driving back home to Trondheim after traveling for about a month. I was driving from Trondheim up to the North Cape and then back. And on the way back home, when I crossed the Arctic Circle again, it was one of the last nights of my trip, basically. And it was just magical. I was driving along a lake and the sun got lower and lower. It was the first sunset after, I don't know, I think after 3 weeks of traveling, because the midnight sun was higher up in the north, of course. And then it was the first sunset after about 3 weeks, and it was just magical. So I had all the colors. I had colors from yellow to orange to pink to red, and then these purple, bluish tones. And I was shooting for about 4 hours, which was definitely insane. I had all the shore of the lake for myself. There was just me and lots of mosquitoes. That was quite annoying, but it was so cool. It was a very peaceful atmosphere. I had all those colors, and I was shooting like 4 hours
Wow.
in amazing light. And that was definitely something that, yeah, a big memory for me and quite some emotions, because it was the end of the trip in a way. And I left that place with so many great pictures and so many great memories. And yeah, I could even drive to the other side of the lake because the light was staying there for so long. So different perspectives on the lake with a mountain in the background, cool foregrounds to find. Yeah, and I kept going back to that place in winter to also see how it looks with snow and northern lights. So that place definitely has a part in my heart.
Awesome. Awesome. What about horror stories? Have you had any sketchy experiences?
I remember one sketchy experience. Surprise, it's in Norway. I was shooting in the West Fjords. I was backpacking there as well. So
Mhm.
I hiked in the mountains in the West Fjords, set up my tent on a ridge, and I took some images and footage with a drone. And at some point, I noticed that something with my drone wasn't right. I couldn't really figure because the batteries were okay, but something was just not right. And I tried to fly it back to land it, but I couldn't control the drone anymore. It was super weird. And at some point, I just saw the drone sinking, and then it
Uh,
just went off. And I was on a ridge. So, yeah, then I had the GPS location of the drone,
okay.
and I tried to find it. I tried to pick it up again because, of course, I had also the memory card in it. And I couldn't see the drone. I just had the GPS, and I was trying to climb to that place where the GPS thought the drone was. And I was climbing down the ridge a little bit, and it was super scary and super sketchy. And at some point, I was like, what the heck am I doing here? Is this really worth it? Maybe I should just let the drone lay there and go back, because it was very steep. There was quite a drop down next to me, so there were quite some meters that
Wow.
I could have fallen down. And at some point, I was like, no, this is just not worth it. Maybe I should just leave the drone there. And
Never
yeah,
found it.
never found it, which was okay. I saved the pictures the day before, so it was I didn't lose that much. But it was definitely a scary experience because of the steepness of the ridge. And I was, of course, totally alone as well. That was the point when I was like, if something happens, nobody could rescue me. So no
Wow.
chance that I risk my life for a drone.
What role does solitude play in your work? Do you prefer being alone in the field or with a group or with people?
So in the beginning, I would have answered with definitely being alone in the field. But recently, I really enjoyed shooting together with other people. Of course, also in the workshops, it's part of
Yeah.
it, but as well with other photographers. So not with a workshop group, but with fellow photographers. For example, last year in summer, I did a trip to the Pyrenees. We were a little hiking crew. Part of them, we were 6 people, I think, and some were photographers, some were not. But it was super fun to, yeah, to be around with creative people.
Yeah.
And we shot quite some sunrises, sunsets together. And that was a fun experience because we were all inspired by each other, because everyone took different images. And
Yeah.
that was just cool to, yeah, to see what other people can do in the same place with different experiences. And yeah.
Yeah. Nice. How has landscape photography shaped your relationship with the natural world?
Whew. So I think I appreciate nature and my environment even more through photography. In the beginning, I was going out to find that beauty, that solitude, and I think it definitely changed my way of seeing and perceiving things in nature. Definitely. I pay more attention to some little details. I pay more attention to, yeah, to also sustainable traveling, sustainable development. Yeah, also nature protection definitely plays a, yeah, more important role in my life now than it was back then. So I think it definitely had
Have
some very
you,
good positive impacts.
sorry, go on.
No, I was basically finished.
Have you used your photography in putting forward that environmental message out to your audience at all?
I always try to with my images I try to make people see that beauty and to understand that we have to save that beauty and preserve it. So that's definitely part of my photography, and yeah, to make people understand that it's super valuable and super important to protect what we love and what we see, because we definitely have a great impact on environment and on
Hello?
all these developments.
I'm interested also in how people work with their images when they get back into the studio. Are you straight into editing when you get back from a shoot, or do you leave things to marinate for a while?
I really like editing, so I'm a big fan of going through my images after a trip. I don't do it immediately, so I usually take maybe 1 or 2 days, but then I'm right into it. Often I have a vision in mind when I take the picture already, so I definitely know where I want this image to go in my post processing, and then I come back to these images and work on them to make them look like what I saw in the moment in the field. Yeah, so it's usually I edit in one go. So because lots of colleagues, they always tell me that they don't finish an image immediately. They let it
Yeah,
marinate
they come back
for
to
maybe 1 or 2 more nights. I'm more the type of person that wants to finish the image and wants to get the result.
it. Yeah,
So I
I'm with you
often,
on.
yeah, it's a different approach, of course, but I usually, yeah, when I start an image, I also finish it in that session.
Yeah, the only time I will come back to one a day or two later is if I've been sitting up till 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning going,
Fair enough.
this isn't working. And I get to a point where, okay, I'm too tired to work on it anymore. Pack it away. I'll look at it tomorrow.
Absolutely, fair
And I
enough.
usually then start from scratch.
Okay, interesting. Oh, yeah.
Depends. Depends on what I've done and where I've got to. I do
Mm,
a lot of non-destructive editing as well, but
yeah.
it just depends on whether or not I like the direction that I was taking. Sometimes I look at it the next day and go, "What was I thinking?" Just start again.
Yeah, it's always good to reflect a little bit on what you've done before. How much time do you take for your images to?
It depends. If it depends on what I'm doing it for. If I'm doing it for a print, say for a customer, then I will be looking, it depends on the size of the print. If it's going to be blown up really large, a couple of meters or 1.5 meters wide or something like that, then I'm going to spend a lot of time going over that image. And I could be 2 or 3 hours prepping that, getting all of the darks and the shadows to a light enough point where they're not going to look muddy and horrible on a print, and selecting the right paper and that sort of thing and thinking about those sorts of things. But yeah, for something that's just a throwaway image that I know I'm not really going to get too excited about selling or printing myself, then anywhere between 10 and 20 minutes.
Fair enough.
It just depends. If it's just an image I'm going to put up on social media and I'm not going to get too excited about. I know I've put images with false dust spots and things up in the past, and I've gone, whatever. Nobody can see it on their phone anyway. So, what about you?
I think I would also say that it depends, of course. It depends on the techniques I use. For example, if I do focus stacking, if I do exposure blending, if I do both, if I do a focus stacked and exposure blended panorama, then of course that's
I mean,
most.
there are shots that I will spend a lot of time on, but there's others that, yeah, it's a single image, single exposure, bang, done.
You
Get it.
name it, exactly. So it really depends on the technique I'm using. Usually, I edit the image as if I was to print it, or if I want to have the opportunity to be able to print it. Yeah, I have also a non-destructive workflow, and I always try, yeah, to get every image to the point where I could print it. Yeah, depending on the process, it usually takes me between 1 and 2.5 hours to get my workflow done and to assign the image personal my personal style.
Yeah, yeah. Most of my stuff that I print, I actually have a print edit process, which is I get the image where it's close, but I know that going onto paper, because it's not got the backlighting that a screen has got, then those shadow areas and the dark areas need to be lifted a little bit. So I do a little bit, of brightening of some of those areas without making them horribly grey or something, keeping them dark but not too dark. And that's where the histogram comes in, and you're sitting there going, okay, I can just get to the black point, no further.
Yeah, it's a fine line, right?
And it depends a lot on what the image is. Like a dark forest image, you've got to lift a little bit more than, say, a seascape where there's a bit more, a sunrise seascape where there's a lot of light around and a high dynamic range. So you still got to be careful with the shadows, but it's less of an issue to get that ready for print than it is for something that might have a lot of darkness in it.
Yeah, true. Also, the difference between night photography and night images,
Oh, absolutely.
and just daylight or sunrise, sunset images is huge. Yeah. So you need to adapt, yeah, to the scene and try different techniques for different kinds of photographs.
Do you do any printing yourself, or do you use a service to print?
So I barely print. I don't print myself. So if I order a print, then it goes via service. But I haven't done it that much, so there's still a lot to learn for me in printing. And I know that's a different universe. There's quite some people I know that do a lot of printing, and they are like, yeah, if you started it, then you can't stop. So it's a second addiction then.
Yeah.
Yeah, so far I haven't dived into that, but maybe after my studies, when I have a little more time for all that, yeah, let's see.
I know enough about it to know that I don't really want to get into it.
Okay.
But that's me.
Yeah, I guess it's a lot of work. So,
It's funny. My father used to work in the print industry. He used to make multi-lith printers. He didn't make them. He ran a company that sold them, but they made multi-lith printers, which were the old school prints that used your blue, magenta, yellow, black inks, and used to run the paper through several times to do it, each layer in different tones, so that you ended up with a full color image at the end. And having seen that process back in the 70s and 80s last century, there's a lot to learn about that, and a lot that I don't want to know.
yeah, you see the magic happening, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm interested in how people have dealt with struggling to find inspiration. Have you had a situation where it's just not happening for you, and how did you get around it?
Yeah, there's definitely some phases where I struggle with my photography or with photography in general. And it's always these ups and downs sometimes. I think it's also normal. It belongs to life. But yeah, there are definitely phases in which I struggle quite a lot. And then I usually go through my profile and I'm like, what the heck? Why do my images look like that and not like that? And so you question yourself a little bit, and also, yeah, you look at different other photographers, different other profiles, and you're like, okay, my profile, it doesn't stand out that much. And this is the point where I usually try to take a little break also from photography and just to see it with different eyes again. I also try to do some trips without a camera, which is super important, because then you train your eye for different things and you don't think in pictures all the time. Because usually when I'm out, like normally on the streets, I always think in pictures.
Yeah.
And when you don't have a camera, it's a little different still. So I also try to do some hiking trips, for example, in the mountains without a camera, so that I can leave that part out of it and focus more on being there in the moment. And usually then after some days, some weeks, I'm back to my confidence in photography. And yeah,
You find yourself wanting to get out and doing it.
exactly. At some point you really miss it. So that's the moment when you're like, okay, I'm ready again to pick up my camera and see what I can do. And usually after these phases of frustration, my style and my approach also has changed a little bit. I often cannot tell what has exactly changed, but something is different, and I just have this new motivation and inspiration. And then I know I'm ready to go again.
Fantastic. I was going to ask about that period after you get back into it. Do you find it takes a while to find an image and get that first couple of images done before you say, okay, I'm hitting my stride now. I know exactly what I'm doing? because I know when I take a break from it, and I think the longest one I've had is probably about 3 months where I've not actively gone out and taken photos. And the first couple of photos that I try, they're not so good.
Interesting.
And
Interesting.
then
Yeah, I
three or
think,
four photos in, I go, okay, yep, now I'm back. Now I know where I
and
am.
then it gets better again.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I have both. I have experienced both. So sometimes I definitely have this little struggle, just as you, when I'm like, okay, sometimes it's not very great from the beginning again, but sometimes I had it the other way around, where I was like, I was so inspired again. And the first images I took were the best ones from that shooting. So it really depends, but usually I have to struggle with the camera gear just to if I haven't touched a camera for 3 months, I'm like, okay, where was that button again? It takes about a couple of minutes and then I'm right back to it. So it's
Yeah.
not a long time that yeah.
I'm usually fumbling, going, I've set this for high speed because I was doing some surf shots or some action shots somewhere, and I get it out and I want to do a long exposure, and I've just not set everything right. And it's
Yeah.
what do you see as being the biggest challenge facing photography right now?
The biggest challenge. So right now, I would definitely say to balance photography with my everyday life. Yeah, especially because studying takes quite some time and I have my hard disks and hard drives full of images that I would love to edit. And then at some point it's hard to ignore them and to say, okay, I have to get that paper done or I have to
Yeah, yeah,
study for that exam. So yeah, I think this is a challenge I'm facing right now. Otherwise, I think I've always seen photography as a process. So nothing happens overnight. And it's, yeah, it always takes a little time to learn new techniques or, yeah, to develop an own style. So I also like to take the time for that because I know that I have to be patient with it. And I'm not a patient person at all. So this is definitely also a struggle and a challenge to learn to be more patient with my photography. But I know that it's worth it. So I'm on a good way, I think.
fantastic. What do you see as photography's place in society?
I think these days everyone kind of does photography because it's all around. We all have smartphones. We all have possibilities to take pictures. But I think there's still a difference in why you take pictures. And
Yeah,
this is different for for all the people in society. Some they just take pictures with their phone to memorize that moment. Some take pictures to take their time outdoors or to plan their pictures. So I think the approach for everyone is a little different, but I think photography is very present in our everyday life and in society, definitely.
what do you see as the future of photography in general? Not for you specifically.
I think there's lots of challenges coming up, especially with AI. So it's not necessary to go to places on your own. You can also create images with AI, which is a big challenge, a big problem, maybe. I would say it's also a different approach. So maybe it's a cool tool for some people to play around with it and to see what's possible. And I
Sure.
think also again the own imagination and the yeah, it really depends on what you want. If you want to be outdoors with your camera, if you want to experience those moments, or for example, if you want to, yeah, shoot something specifically, then AI cannot replace that. AI
Yeah.
cannot replace the feeling that you have with your camera, but it can definitely be a tool for some, yeah, for some photographers. So I wouldn't say it's only a bad thing because it can do some magic. And we also use AI for noise reduction. We use AI for getting rid of distracting things. So it's already there also in our workflows. But I think yeah, it will be a challenge to balance that
It's
amount of
being
AI
built
that we
into
use.
cameras with autofocus and various other pieces of
You name it, it's already there. So it's not only a bad thing.
that's the thing. It's about I think it's about using AI in a way that actually helps you as a photographer as opposed to being something that's completely opposite to being a photographer.
Exactly. As long as you don't combine a sky from Madeira with a mountain in Switzerland and then you put the northern lights above it or something
Oh
crazy
yeah,
like
why
that.
not?
Yeah, creative imagination. Yeah, I think it's just a personal taste what you want to do with your photography. And
Last year there were people seeing and photographing the Northern Lights up in Queensland, which is way to the north of where we are and way to the north of where Southern Lights, I should say, are normally seen. It's just last year's Aurora events were just incredible. That was insane.
Exactly, but this is something that you cannot have with AI, right? You can have the same images with AI, but you cannot have that feeling with AI because that night in May last year, it was just crazy, and people saw it all over the world, and everyone who saw it has memories about it. And I think this is what AI can never create. So you will never know exactly. Yeah, and I think this is why photography is still worth so much, because it brings us back to these moments that we actually lived.
What's your favorite thing about being a photographer?
I think my favorite thing is about creating those memories outdoors and still have the image for myself afterwards. That's definitely one big part, and also all the great people that I meet along the way, because I know that I met so many cool, amazing, nice people that I would never have met without photography. And I'm super thankful for all these encounters, for all these moments. I have made some very good friends through photography. I can also I can earn my money with photography right now, which is great and which is a big privilege. So I think there's lots of things that photography open doors for me, and awesome. I'm super thankful for that. And I think it's mostly the people that I met through it.
Fantastic. What about your least favorite thing about photography?
All the paperworks. Definitely all the paperworks with taxes and all that stuff, but it's a part of it. You have to do it, and I also see it as a part, so it's okay. But I think that's just the thing that annoys me the most.
Fair enough. What's the best and or worst piece of advice anyone's ever given you?
So I think the best advice is just to enjoy what you're doing, because if you don't have fun with it, then you won't have success with it. So this is something very important, and something I also teach people when I give advice to them. And the worst advice, I think the worst thing that can happen is if you just copy others without really thinking what you like.
Yeah.
Because everyone sees different things, and if you're not willing to be creative on your own, then I think it doesn't work.
Yeah. I think that's fantastic. Thank you.
Come.
We're just about ready to wrap up. I've got a couple more questions. Are there any photographers out there that you think I should be talking to?
Yeah, I was thinking about Josh Cripps. Yep. He's one of the photographers I was hiking in the Pyrenees with. We were there for
seen
a couple of days.
Josh's work,
Yeah, Josh Cripps, he's amazing. He's based in California. He runs a gallery there, and he's a super fun and great guy to be around. And he has lots of stories to tell because he's hiking a lot in his backyards. He also runs workshops, and he is a very kind and fun person. So I think you would really enjoy the conversation with him, and he has lots of stories to tell for sure.
Awesome.
And also one guy I just met a couple of weeks ago, Clément Coder. He's a Frenchman based in Iceland, and he's a super fun and inspiring guy. He's also a glacier guide, and his photography is amazing. So he does lots of drone photography, volcano photography, glaciers. I was with him in Norway when we were running a workshop there together, and I think he would be a cool person to talk to.
Fantastic. Thank you for those. My last question is one that I've been trying to get to the bottom of since the beginning of the podcast. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
No, definitely not. No pineapple on pizza for me. I stick to the Italian rule. Yeah, I have a good friend of mine, Francesco Gola. He's a great guy. He's so fun, and he would say the same. No pineapple on pizza. What about you?
Me, I don't care. If it's there, I'll eat it. I don't order it per se, but if it's then whatever.
But I think this is the important thing. If you ordered it, then there would be something.
I don't go out of my way to order it. As a kid, it was fairly popular, but I don't go out of my way to get it. But if it's there, I'm not picking it off. It's fine. I'm okay with sweet and salty.
Okay. Very diplomatic answer.
I have to be on both sides of the camp. So.
Of course.
All right. Thank you ever so much, Laura. It's been fantastic spending some time with you and getting to know you a little bit better. Where can people find your work?
People can find my work via my website, www.laura-oppelt-photography.de. And they can also find me on Instagram. My username is Oppdager, Oppdager. It's a Norwegian word, and it means discoverer. And
yeah.
I thought it's very cool because the first three letters are the same as my last name. That's the connection. But yeah, they can find me there.
Wonder where it came from.
Yeah, it's from Norwegian, discoverer.
Mine's boring. It's just my name and photography.
Fair enough. People can definitely find you.
That's right. There's too many other Grant Swinburnes out there doing photography.
Probably not.
I hope not. All right. Thank you very much, Laura. It's been wonderful. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation again. It was very fun. I really liked it. I hope my English German wasn't too bad, or my German English.
Yeah, way better than my Hesslich Deutsch.
Yeah, it was super fun to talk to you. And yeah, I will definitely keep listening to your podcasts.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Laura.
Thank you too.
Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnephotography.com, along with prints and photography gear. I'm also on Vero, Photo, YouTube, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Facebook. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.